So, one of the most popular genres in entertainment today is true crime. True crime is the forensic and nonfiction analysis of a crime that has taken place in real life. It often covers murders and the careers of serial killers. These are the most popular kinds of subject matter for true crime, but it also follows things such as rape cases, kidnappings, and other highly sensationalized crimes in media. So this will take form in books, movies, TV series, documentaries, podcasts, YouTube videos, and the list goes on and on. It's an extremely popular genre that's popular on Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, all the big ones. And this often recounts stories from people that were involved in the case. It often describes the investigation itself. It goes over details, and and often reviews the lives after the crime but from those who were affected. In the book Crime, Fear, and Law in True Crime Media, Anita Baresi kind of discusses how, while it's such a popular genre, the genre itself did not exist until 1966 with Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. This is highly considered the first true crime novel, as well as the first nonfiction novel. And it follows the murder of the Clutter family in a small farming town in Kansas back in 1959. It goes through describing their lives before the murder, the lives of the killers before the murder itself, and then the paranoia that the town faces after this murder and the attempted escape of their killers. So Capote himself spent many years studying these events and following the case as it progressed, which eventually did lead to the capture of these killers. And this book set up the basic format for the genre. And while this is what's mainly used today, that kind of details before, event, details after, there are a lot of new additions as it's taken on new forms and come into new types of media. So, as you can see from the clip from the Aaron Hernandez documentary that was released this year on Netflix, it follows a case that's not only from a celebrity, it was highly sensationalized because of that and because of the lack of motive. This case kind of shocked the public when it happened. The documentary revisits the details that were present within his case and within his two trials, but it also goes over him as a kid before he was a professional athlete, interviewing friends and family, talking to employees for the New England Patriots who knew him while he was a professional athlete, how he kind of progressed, how he changed. It also visits journalists who played a part not only in covering his case, but also played a part within his own trials, effectively shaping how the public was able to see him, as well as forensic experts who discussed how CTE might have affected him and his thought process during the time of these crimes. So the inclusion of this evidence kind of allows another level that people were not able to see. It can change public opinion. And a lot of true crimes has been really popular, but one thing that is flawed with it that many people tend to point out is that it is highly romanticized. It is something that people are very interested in, and we're like, oh, murder, and it's very normalized. And according to Ruth Penfold Mounts, forensic science and true crime really do normalize this to the public. We're very comfortable with the ideas of hearing details of murder. It kind of almost rolls off our shoulders. We're so used to the idea of it. But there's always going to be some sort of line, and that line tends to be when it hits close to home, when it's in your neighborhood, when it's close to you, when there's a real body involved. People tend to not be able to stomach details such as seeing a corpse live. And so these documentaries and TV shows tend to be the ones that are most guilty of romanticizing and kind of creating this normalization narrative for really gruesome crimes and really violent crimes. And taking it in the other direction, podcasts specifically tend to be more cut and dry about facts. There's no level of separation, or not no level of separation, but a much smaller level of separation. You're getting less of the pleasant details. You're not seeing as much of the interviews with family that kind of describe what a good person a victim was. You're seeing more investigative journalism with these podcasts, and these podcasts, really popular ones, do go in and like review evidence and look at the crime itself and do their own investigation. A really popular one would be Up and Vanished with Lindsay Payne, and she kind of reviews cold cases of people that disappeared and were never seen or heard from again. And what this does is, while it does kind of shed new light on certain cases and sometimes even lead to new leads or convictions, what it more often does is wedge a forensic journalist into this investigation and into this narrative in a very off-putting and unpleasant way. Maya Hibbett kind of discusses this with her paper, and claims it often causes problems for investigations that are ongoing, and gives prosecutors issues sometimes, because then you're seeing different sources of evidence. This kind of and a lot of podcasters tend to criticize the work of police units that do original investigations, and the cases go cold. It often criticizes the justice system for being flawed and not working hard enough to find answers for these unsolved crimes. But it ignores the fact that it uses the tactics that these investigators and these forensic journalists kind of use, the same tactics that police often use, and they criticize those tactics, but they're using the same ones. They're interviewing old witnesses. They are recovering old leads, and while they might scrutinize them a little more and be a little more thorough because they have that time on their hands, it's all that they're looking at, it ignores the fact that they're criticizing work that they're using. And often kind of inhibits the ability for overall reform. It just points out problems and then perpetuates those problems itself. And while it does reveal those issues, it doesn't solve them. It doesn't attempt to solve them. And this can also be really problematic for victims who are still around, or victims' families, and can reopen old wounds and re-victimize, and overall be very much self-motivated. And so true crime is very highly entertaining genre. It fascinates people around the world across ages and genders and backgrounds. It's very interesting for everyone to kind of see. But while there are forms of viewership and forms of production that can be harmless and more informative, a lot of these forms of more modern documentaries tend to be a little more obsessive and intrusive, and can even be disrespectful to the families of victims.